Kelvin Ramnath, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, and will uphold the Constitution and the law, that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as a minister, and do right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will.
A devoted family man, one of the longest serving members of Parliament in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, and a great orator. These are some of the hallmarks in the life of Kelvin Ramnath.
Kelvin always had a deep compassion for people and things. He always wanted to do things for people.
The time he spent out of politics, he spent it with his family.
He got involved in politics at a very young age with Mr. Basdev Pandey.
A dedicated man who loved his country and served it without fear and without favor.
Kelvin Ramnath served in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago continuously from 1976 through 1991. And while he left electoral politics between 1991 and 2000, serving on occasion as a temporary senator, he would return to electoral politics, regaining the Coover South seat as a member of the United National Congress in 2001, and again in 2002 and 2007. In the Parliament, he would speak on well over 100 bills and motions. He also served on numerous parliamentary committees. Ramnath's parliamentary contributions were always thoughtful and well delivered. He would speak on bills as diverse as the various appropriations bills brought to the Parliament over the years, constitutional amendment bills, bills on the police service, the Caribbean Court of Justice, equal opportunities, education, national housing, immigration, and many more. His were usually prolific and stellar contributions.
Kelvin had a remarkable ability. He very often spoke without notes. So in terms of what might be called extemporaneous speaking, he was brilliant. He also had a special ability in creating images, and so was able to pulverize and destroy the arguments of his opponents in Parliament whenever he was speaking, in such a way that they felt subdued into acquiescence, almost paralyzed, and were unable really to make any subsequent effort to undermine his arguments and the strength of what he was saying. So that is how people remember him,
He was a fantastic orator, with an acid tongue. People feared his tongue. Whereas some orators would demolish their opponents as if they were chopping them up with a hatchet. Kelvin wouldn't do that at all. He was so smooth. He would cut them into nice fine pieces with a razor. That was the power of his oratory. He really was a fantastic orator.
One of the highlights of Ramnath's political life was serving as Minister of Energy and then Minister of Public Utilities in the National Alliance for Reconstruction government between 1987 and 1988. Differences led to a walkout by Ramnath and other members of the former United Labour Front.
His entry into politics was not to have office and not to have power, but to actually serve the people. And he also was a champion for equality and justice and fair play. And because he felt that in the NAR, those politicians who came out of the United Labour Front were not being fairly treated, and that the NAR was not living up to the promises it had made, that he would perhaps be better off out of the government.
I recall when we go to the cabinet meeting and we would raise this idea about imbalance in the state boards and so on, over and over. One day Mr. Robinson says, "You all are always talking about imbalance and so on and so forth. Where are your proposals? Where are your proposals?" So the next meeting, next cabinet meeting, we raised the matter again, And he responded in the same way. Where are your proposals? And Kelvin Ramnath pulled out one long sheet of paper from his back pocket and started reading it, which made Robinson absolutely furious. But he was that type of person. He was unafraid. He was so secure in himself that you couldn't buy him and you couldn't bully him.
Outside of politics, Ramnath also enjoyed a distinguished career in the energy sector, including serving in senior positions at Petrotrin until his retirement.
A graduate of McGill University. He was a dedicated and professional engineer with a highly successful career at Petrotrin, but also a consummate politician. And therefore, very few people in this country could have played two occupational roles with such conspicuous success as he did.
He worked at Petrotrin for 30 years as a petroleum engineer first and a HSE manager, and then moved on to executive HSE manager.
Kelvin Ramnath was also a very committed family man who raised 7 children, 4 with his first wife who passed away, and 3 with his second wife. Ramnath always made a time for his family in spite of his hectic political and professional life.
He always fulfilled the obligations of family life to the best of his ability, not only in terms of financial support, but in terms of serious guidance and advice that he could give or to his spouse or to the children in the house.
He loved his children dearly. We would go to pick him up sometimes to go off to a political meeting, and he would be with the children, sitting with the children, teaching them, making sure their homework was done. And it was not uncommon to hear him calling out the names of the children if they were not immediately with him, if they were not with him at the time. Come, let me see if your lessons are properly done. And although we were running late at times, he would just insist that they do their work and that they were okay. He secured them before leaving the house and made sure his wife was all right.
He was a loving father to his children. It was a great family he had.
We actually was fortunate enough to live on a lake in the back of the house. And you wouldn't believe he spent a lot of time fishing as well with his children. So the point is that we spent a lot of quality time together.
On July 21st, 2012, Kelvin Ramnath passed away. He left behind a legacy of dedicated service to his country and commitment to his family. His is an indelible mark on the political landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. Ramnath's sharp wit and stellar debating and oratory skills will long be remembered. He was truly an exemplar.
First, he was honest. Nobody could make any allegations. He was courageous. He was fearless. He would speak his mind regardless of the consequences. That is the kind, and he was thoughtful, he was brilliant. That's the kind of quality we need in our young leaders if the country is going to go forward. Fearlessness, to speak out your mind, speak what you believe in, regardless of the consequences. Kelvin was like that.
He has made enormous contributions, not only at the level of the House of Representatives, but in building, molding parties, and in fact encouraging others to come into the political fray. Kelvin Ramnath was a good human being, and I think that is the bottom line, who cared for people.
A very experienced, skillful debater. Could not be bought or sold. And a good father. A family man, a founder of the UNC, and helping a lot of people.
I think he was a people's person, and he was gifted with oratorical skills and a certain level of linguistic sophistication. And therefore he became aware of his efficacy in terms of being an advocate on behalf of people and the cause of people. He himself came from what might be called a more deprived background, and out of the bowels of poverty rose to some prominence in society and professional success. And he was just one of those citizens of this country who feel strongly that perhaps having been successful in life, they should lift up the rest of humanity on the wings of their own success. And I think that would have been his motivating factor.